Ciao, hi, hey guys, it's your boy MKS here, back in another video, and welcome to the fourth and final part of, I forgot what this is again, something about Juventus, I know, but sorry, how to help Juventus to become, or to have, rather, a series of world-class academies, and as per usual, as I normally do, I thought I would talk about what I hope to achieve in the future. And I was just remembering that just before I made this video, about 5 or 10 minutes before, maybe even more than that, being a bit pedantic or whatever that is, but might not be exact. Anyway, I was just remembering this afternoon, because I didn't get up till about 11:30 or even after that. But anyway, I normally go to a coffee morning or well-being cafe or whatever, but I didn't today. But I was remembering that something I forgot to cover in point number 26 and triple 27, especially point number 26. I would love to have covered it, and maybe 27 as well. I mentioned about how I'd love to reward those who help Juventus. I could have mentioned point number 26, like anyone. I'd love to have these, and I was going to say I don't have a cup of tea for once, so I'm going to wait till about, I was going to say half an hour, but now it's actually only 10 minutes away, so roughly. Just over 10 minutes away, but yeah, it's about 2 o'clock to have my second cup of tea. Need my sleep patterns, but I'd love to have a jar or something like that. I don't have one with me now, but something to put money in, like this, something like that, maybe better than that, because that's glass. I wouldn't want to, not better, but more apt for what to be used for. But basically, a jar, it could even be a mug or a glass or any sort of jar, as long as it's in hopefully a safe area, where like people could have it for like swearing. So anyone who swears, for goodness sake, could put money in it. Or every time you smoke, let's say you spend £4 on cigarettes or £5. I don't smoke, so I wouldn't know how much. They're probably not more expensive than that now. But if you buy a packet of cigarettes, you would put whatever you spend in that jar. Or if you drank alcohol, you put that much money in, or whatever it is people decide upon. And for me, each month, I would love to have started that ideally at the start of this year, for a new year. In fact, I wanted to start it ages ago, but from a selfish point of view, for this month, for instance, and maybe in June and July as well, or at least some of that month, but let's say all of January, if I could, every time someone calls me or like anyone distract me, I don't mean call on the phone, I mean like Michael at the top of their voice, I've said in the past, like, or every time someone gave me an errand, basically, every time someone called me / gave me an errand, I would get them to put, if I could, if I was big and ugly enough, I'm probably ugly and fat enough, but not muscular enough. But if I could, I would make them put money in that jar, and I was thinking maybe even like 10% of whatever money they have, or 10% of their earnings, or 10% of their pension if they're retired, or whatever, or even, or at least 1%, maybe 10% of it, or maybe just £1 or something like that, or whatever. And maybe other people can run with that idea as well. So people in Italy, for instance, especially in Turin, I suppose rival clubs probably won't want to do that, but if it was like a national centre which would benefit youth development in a town football, hopefully people from Italy itself and from the diaspora, as many of them as possible, would encourage this. So for instance, it could be whatever you want to punish or discourage, whether that's smoking, drinking, taking drugs, swearing, for goodness sake, I want to say something else, but or calling, distracting, or every time you give someone an errand or a task to do, like errand / task, same sort of thing, you would put money into that jar and that kind of thing. I was going to say that in the list itself, but I thought I'd say that in the intro. There were one or two other things I wanted to say, but I'm going to crack on with the rest of this list. So it's the last part of the list, of course, for those who've seen my other videos. Anyway, these are points number 31 to 40. So here goes. So number 31, in the future, I dream to fundraise as much as possible and help, basically do whatever I can to help. I suppose that would require funding, like fundraising and things like that. Again, like having that jar, whatever, each time someone swears or smokes, drinks, or whatever it might be. And that kind of thing, each time someone gives someone an errand or a task, if people enforce it, and I think if they stick to it, if I could, I would start it in January and encourage that idea, so that anyone who does any of those things, like distracts someone, or talks over someone, calls someone to an errand task, or whatever you want to call it, or whatever, and that kind of thing, they put money in a jar, whatever's an pre-agreed amount, and that money would go towards Juventus in this case for January. In February, I hope to do like African stuff for African American empowerment and that kind of thing, but I won't go through the rest here, otherwise it will take even longer to go through. But yeah, each month I hope to think of a different thing. In this month, it will be a selfish thing to support youth development in Italian football, especially through Juventus, but youth academies all over the country, including for the national team. So for Italy to have its own version of like Clairefontaine, Amazia, and things like that. And I'd love for Juventus to have as many academies as possible and provide as many youngsters around the world, but especially in Italy itself, as possible opportunities. Also, I'll come to that a bit later, but yeah, I dream that they'll have world-class academies, and again, I hope to fundraise for and do whatever I can to help that and look at what they can learn from other academies. And I love to share my philosophies and strategies with Juventus and for other neurodiverse people and Anglo-Indians and Eurasians to do so, and to help with funding and things like that, and sharing our ideas. And moving on, number 32. So yeah, hopefully they'll learn from Barcelona, Ajax, and other teams. Normally I'd say Real Madrid is like the benchmark, but they just have a lot of money and buy better players. In this case, I'd love for them to learn from more like Barcelona, Ajax. I'm trying to think of who else have good academies off the top of my head. I can't think of who has famous academies. I suppose they do become feeder clubs. Like Ajax don't tend to win much, but they become feeder clubs. I guess Barcelona did win quite a lot though with their youth academy and the benefit of the national team. But yeah, learning even from like Spain itself, I suppose it was very reliant on, funny enough, on Barcelona, which can be a very separatist part, unfortunately. I love for Mediterranean nations to be more united, from a biased point of view, as I think of Mediterranean or whatever, with the combination. But on that note, also, as I say, I'd love to encourage for that reason mainly, and as they have something in common with me, and as I normally say, killing two birds with one stone, I'd love to encourage my fellow, as I say, Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians to support Italian teams and like to practice, especially at youth level, and get into football and hopefully become coaches, players, and things like that, and benefit Italian football and Celtic. Yeah, I'd love for them to have world-class youth academies and look at everything they can do to have those youth academies. Obviously, funding is part of it to build the youth academies and things like that, and get builders to build those things. But also, obviously, that's part of it, and then it's the training. Just like having playing football requires you to have the ingredients of having a football and then having other people to play with. Otherwise, if you play football just by yourself, it's hard to improve yourself. Or you can practice a little bit, like target practice or whatever, shooting at a certain target. But in terms of playing against other players, especially older players, I think you learn a lot. So getting that balance right between child protection, safeguarding, and that kind of thing, as we call it here in the UK. I don't think of it that overseas, but making sure children are safe and people are safe, but also at the same time giving them opportunities to learn from older people as well, and that kind of thing. Also improving diets and that kind of thing. Number 33, as I say, to improve youth academies, and I said in point number 21, in part 3, I mentioned how I could have said in point number 3 or 4, especially in point number 3, about how I'd love to benefit Italian football generally, like help them to have more funding to buy better players, and help the national team and youth development and that kind of thing, and always to play, almost at this point, but always to play 3 under 21 players, but also about how 3 specific Italian teams, other than the national team, are, I suppose, I could have put in point number 4, because 4 including the national team, or even more, 5 including all the different Italian teams. So football in schools and in parks and things like that, parents and teachers and whatnot, to encourage football. But yeah, Milan, I would love to build like a scary team which matches what their manifesto, maybe we'll call it manifesto or whatever, says, their description, which is like to put fear into the opposition. A team of devils that basically could be a nightmare for the opposition. But Roma, I'd love to have an even better team, because I'd love for them to have the Giallorossi Galacticos, the new Real Madrid, or whatever, to be the new Real Madrid, and have basically so many great signings, the best possible goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, strikers, and players in all possible positions, including squad players as well as just a team, and I suppose best possible managers, coaches, coaching staff, directors of football, dietitians and whatnot. So all the things that can make a great club, and looking at the ingredients of what makes a great club. And then Juventus, I'd love to specifically fundraise to help, and just generally to help them with ideas for them to have the best possible academies in the world, which I think would again fit their description. With Roma, it's like Giallorossi Galacticos, given my use of alliterations, and Roma to be the new Real Madrid in alliterations and that kind of thing, and like the capital club, and become the best hopefully in the world, winning Champions Leagues. With AC Milan and Roma, I'd especially love to see them winning like Champions Leagues and World Club Cups and things like that. winning as many of those as possible, especially Roma. But with Juventus, I'd love for them to win like so many academy clubs. And again, I mentioned before, like I know that many Juventus supporters will probably disagree with me on this, but I'd love for Juventus to be to potentially be a feeder club for AC Milan, and especially for Real Madrid, Roma, a big one, and for the national team in particular. Most of all, I suppose, for the national team, closely followed by Roma, and then closely followed by AC Milan. But probably went into a bit too much detail on that. But anyway, moving on, number 34, as I say, I dream that I have the best academies in the world, and all over the world, but especially in Italy itself, and produce, as I say, great players for the national team, and possibly become a feeder club for Milan and especially Roma. Hopefully, if my dreams come true. Number 35. But I dream that the supporters, the fans, supporters, or whatever you want to call them, of Juventus, fans / supporters, or the same thing, I guess. And I suppose supporters could also be financial backers, but I hope they'll be happy. I hope financial backers, for instance, will be happy to put their brand out, and that would improve their PR and that kind of thing. And hopefully there'll be a good return on investment, therefore. But I hope that Juventus fans / supporters themselves will be happy, because it will mean that they could say we're proud to provide great players for the national team, and maybe they could still win trophies, Serie A titles and things like that, and even compete in the Champions League and things like that, maybe with those great young players. But I suppose obviously for Milan and of course especially Roma, buy those players. Well, either way, I guess whichever team might buy them, if they became a feeder club, obviously they wouldn't do that. But I guess the irony is, normally Juventus, I've seen videos where on YouTube where people say, why do so many different Italian teams hand Juventus their best talent? So obviously this will be in reverse. But as I say, I hope Juventus fans will be happy about that. Like saying we're proud to provide for the national team and help win World Cups and things like that, even if those players go on to play for Milan and Roma or whatever, Milan and Roma or whatnot. Number 36. I dream that Italians will play and practice their football for at least an hour a day and as many hours a day as possible, 365 days of the year, even on birthdays, Christmas, New Year, things like that, always finding time, pretty much, I'd say 365 days a year, and hopefully practicing many hours, like at least an hour a day in school, and then when they get home, and like each hour they spend online is a bit weird for me, I guess, but each hour they spend online, they can spend an hour playing football, so their parents will say, like, go to the park and play football. Although I'd love for them to encourage them to enjoy football, which I mean, with that passion they can improve. Number 37, also for Juventus to have a stronger partnership. And even, I think they do have some sort of partnership, but I hope they'll have an even stronger partnership with not only the rest of the town, but with Celtic too, and playing practice together. I suppose I'm wearing this Portugal cap, which I normally wear for part 4, but it's sort of green and white, just like Celtic, and we have a Portuguese player, Jota, and maybe in the future we'll have more, but also hopefully lots of great Italian players maybe, but especially at youth level, practicing and playing together at like 5 and 6 and especially 7-side pitches and that kind of thing, and different training strategies and learning from each other and see how they can improve their game. So I think for me it'd be an exciting prospect to see Italy finally producing great young players, and not only that, I think we do produce great young players, but giving them a chance to sort of have game time in Serie A and in European games and things like that. Number 38, I hope I can bring Juventus fans / supporters around to say, okay, we might not, if we sell our players, or if you have so many young players, it will take them a while to develop. They won't be world class straight away. It will take years. Unfortunately, I'm not the most patient, but so it means you might not win trophies for a long time. If you sell them to Milan and or Roma, you might not win trophies that much at all, really. But because they'll be more busy focused on developing those players. But hopefully they'll be proud, as I say, to develop players for the national team. And I think like Juventus Creators Lab, that's something on YouTube where it's like Juventus supporters making videos, so creators who as in YouTube creators who support Juventus. But I'd love for them to have Creators Labs where they help to produce, as I said before, I think probably in all the first three parts if you like, or before this, basically to produce or create the next best players in the world, the best goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders. The next off the top of my head, I think like players like Messi, Ronaldo, two Ronnies, two Ronaldos or two Ronnies. He had a show here in Britain called the Two Ronnies comedy show, but in this case, hopefully it won't be a comedy show. Hopefully it'll be great players that try those skills and try different skills, and maybe if one skill doesn't work, they could always try another and keep practicing. Sometimes I think a lot of time I think if you give away the strategies to if other now I'm open and share the ideas. So if other like the FA or Barcelona or Real Madrid or whoever see these videos, they might say, "Oh, we know how they're going to play." But if you've got so many different tricks, if one doesn't work, you can always try a different one, and the opposition doesn't know which one you're going to try. But if the opposition knows what you're going to do, I guess it's much easier. But yeah, hopefully they could try different tricks, and you don't know which one they're going to use, and things like that. And hopefully, if they practice so much, they'll be much quicker than the opposition and much fitter and more stamina. Even if the game goes into extra time or things like this, a close game, hopefully they'll carry on with more stamina and maybe learn how to stay calm under pressure. And like Germany, learn how to be good at penalties and things like that, both in terms of saving them and in terms of scoring them. And number 39, talking about not the opposition not knowing what you want to do. I'd love for maybe even like sometimes the coach there want you lads to young lads to especially to maybe it could be similar for the women's team, girls team, or whatever, but especially the boys' teams could be like learning different strategies, not just tricks, but not just individual tricks as individuals, but as a team. Like if I raise my right hand, it means I'm going to go short, but it seems like I'm going long. Or before the game we plan it. So in this game, everyone must know that. As let's say if I'm a right back, if I raise my right arm, it means I'm going to go long. But in another game, people think, oh yeah, he's raising his right arm. Means it goes long every time he does that, but we'll change the strategy each game. But obviously the team and the squad has to know what you're going to do. More importantly than even the coach or the manager knowing. Most importantly, the players know what they're going to do, but the opposition doesn't. So hopefully everyone will get on board, and before each game, maybe drawing up a tactic board on a whiteboard or a white piece of paper and drawing up. I suppose I could have brought one of my notebooks, but I think like a space most people don't use, like the blank cover at the front and back, which you normally get in notebooks, I've noticed. They could use that space to draw a pitch, and like including neurodivergent people with dyslexia and autism, possibly ADHD or whatever in Italy, to draw those pictures and draw up a pitch, and then the tactics that they would use, but also like I say, using hand signals, which would be quite fitting considering Italians are known to like speak with their hands and all this sort of stuff. So they could use that to their advantage in terms of making use of it in a game, so the opposition doesn't know what you're going to do, but your teammates know what you're going to do, hopefully. And you might not even need to shout, you just have to look at each other. Sometimes you might shout, but sometimes you look at each other. When I play football, I shout quite a lot, believe it or not. I'm normally quite quiet. My late aunt asked me, like, she said about her partner who used to play football. She said he's very different. He's not the quiet spoken guy when he goes on the pitch. And she said, I bet you're like that. And I was like, I'm not sure. But when I think about it, I do sort of talk a lot and shout a lot and things like that. I suppose I do in my videos, not shout, but talk a lot and talk in which. But yeah, they could do hand signals and that kind of thing. So the opposition, if you do this, the opposition doesn't know what you're doing, or they might not really think much of it. But then like, each time you do that, your teammate knows, yeah, I'm going to go long, or I want you to come short, so I'm going to pass it, or I'm going to try a trick or whatever, cover my back, so to speak, cover my back because I'm going to try a trick or whatever it might be. And I think the midfielders, at least like one centre mid, I'm giving away too much strategy perhaps, but one centre mid and the two wingers and the strikers like trying different tricks, and one centre mid and the four defenders like covering them each time so they can try different tricks. And number 40, as I say, hopefully Juventus will be the best youth academy, have the best youth academy in the world, have the best youth system in the whole of the world, and as I say, be a feeder club for Milan and especially Roma, and in particular the national team, the Italian national team of course, but also maybe have good young players from around the world, but especially from Italy itself. So those are my main dreams, and on that note,